What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Crossover. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was the 10 Tails in Transformers Part 2. Now, let's begin. Weight of the chains. The needle on Agent Simmons' anomalous energy tracker vibrated so rapidly against the red line that the small device began to hum. Sam's small bedroom felt completely devoid of oxygen. 5 heavily armed tactical operatives raised their assault guns, leaving glaring red dots on the 3 youths' chests from their laser sights. "Take the blonde one alive," Simmons insisted, his voice practically quivering with arrogant delight. He placed the tracker back on his belt and crossed his arms. "The eggheads in the lab are going to lose their minds. We actually found the battery." 2 huge agents came forward. One forcibly pushed Michaela into Sam's desk, while the other grabbed Sam by the scruff of his neck and threw him to the floor. "Leave them alone," Naruto demanded, taking a step closer. Click-clack. 3 assault rifles changed instantly, their barrels pointing squarely at Naruto's head. The red laser dots moved across his forehead and chest. "Easy there, Anomaly," Simmons said, strolling casually around the pile of garments on the floor. He leaned closer, staring at Naruto with the focused, clinical gaze of a doctor studying a bug under a microscope. "You breathe, you bleed. But my instruments say you are putting off enough radioactive isotope energy to power the eastern seaboard. What are you? A Soviet experiment? A meat puppet for the NBEs?" Naruto didn't respond. His jaw was clenched so tight that his teeth ground together. The phantom void in his chest, the empty throne of his missing heart, roared. The Jubi energy rushed skyward, fueled by the peril to his friends and the blatant disdain shown by the humans. The temperature in the bedroom dropped. The glass in Sam's window instantly iced over. Under Naruto's jacket collar, the skin on his neck began to ripple. The illusion of human flesh was crumbling under the enormous pressure of his wrath, revealing the perfect, white-gold transformium beneath. A faint, ethereal blue light began to flow through his veins, illuminating the darkened chamber. The agents gripped their rifles tighter, their trained, impassive looks breaking as they saw the youth visibly glow. "Boss," one of the tactical agents mumbled, taking a half-step backward. "Target is displaying anomalous biological shifts. Permission to use the cryocannons?" Simmons' eyes widened as he noticed the bright blue circuitry on Naruto's neck. "No number cryogenic freeze. I want him conscious. Put the heavy irons on him." An agent lunged forward and removed a set of enormous, reinforced steel handcuffs from his tactical vest. Naruto's hands curled into fists. He could sense the hydraulic heaviness of his actual form clamoring to be released. He could snap the agent's neck with a flick of the wrist. He could transform his skin into armor, shattering their bullets on impact. He could rip the roof off the house and command Optimus Prime to nuke these dudes into subatomic ash. But then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed Sam. Sam was pinned on the ground, a heavy combat boot lying perilously close to his head. The youngster was trembling, his eyes wide with utter horror. Michaela was pinned against the desk, her breath coming in frightened gasps as a laser sight focused squarely on her heart. A king is characterized by what he defends, not his blood. Naruto's mind was filled with a sudden, searing clarity. If he morphed into the 10 Tails now, or if he summoned the Autobots to strike, this modest suburban bedroom would turn into a battleground. The people would not survive the crossfire. Naruto closed his eyes. He took a slow, deep, trembling breath. He imagined capturing the blazing blue fire in his veins and pushing it into a massive iron cage. It required a huge amount of energy, his limbs trembling from the strain of restraining a genuine deity. But the temperature in the room gradually rose. The blazing blue circuitry around his neck faded. The white gold metal blended perfectly back into the peach-colored flesh. He opened his eyes. They no longer glowed. They were simply the serene, icy blue of a teen who has made his decision. "Don't hurt them," Naruto whispered, his voice terrifyingly calm, devoid of the panic that a normal child should have. He carefully raised his hands and extended his wrists to the agent. "I'll go with you. Just don't hurt my friends." Simmons scoffed, but he appeared happy that the shimmering had stopped. "You don't negotiate, Anomaly. Cuff him." The agent seized Naruto's wrists, aggressively slapping the heavy steel cuffs on and securing them tightly. The agent attempted to tug Naruto's arms down forcefully, but tripped. Naruto's body was so solid and heavy from the compacted transformium beneath his skin that the agent couldn't move him an inch. Naruto simply lowers his arms, the steel shackles clinking together. To him, the reinforced restraints felt as thin as paper. He could snap them simply by flexing his wrists. Simmons yelled, "Let's move." They were led out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and through the front door. The Suburban's bright beams illuminated the Witwicky front lawn with blinding white light. A chopper flew overhead, illuminating the neighborhood. Neighbors peered out their windows, afraid at the military occupation of their calm street. Ron and Judy Witwicky were held face down on their own lawn, with their wrists chained behind their backs and surrounded by armed guards. "Mom! Dad!" Sam yelled as he struggled against the agent taking him toward a black SUV. "Don't you touch my son!" Ron shouted, pressing his face against the damp grass. "I want a lawyer." "What agency are you with?" "We are a benevolent organization, Mr. Witwicky," Simmons stated as he stepped out onto the porch. "Sector 7. And unfortunately, you and your wife are going to be taking a little vacation." "National Security." Two agents brought Naruto down the porch stairs. As he proceeded into the central Suburban, his gaze was drawn to the deep shadows cast by the enormous oak trees that lined the property. The human agents could not see them, but Naruto could. Optimus Prime, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Bumblebee stood completely motionless in the darkness, towering above the two-story house with their gigantic, gloomy forms. To escape discovery, they muted their optical sensors to a faint, scarcely noticeable glow. But Naruto could sense their utter, blazing hatred. The ambient frequency in the air vibrated with mechanical malice. The Autobots were staring as human soldiers bound their almighty king in shackles. In the shadows, Ironhide's enormous arm moved. The faint, high-pitched whine of a plasma cannon charging up penetrated the night air, masking the sound of the chopper overhead. Ironhide was about to break cover and slaughter the agents pulling Naruto. Naruto's walk came to an end. The agents attempted to push him forward, but he stood firm as a mountain. He gazed directly into the darkness, locking eyes with Optimus Prime's weak, blue optical sensors. Naruto did not speak. He did not need to. He sent a stealthy, commanding pulse of Genesis energy outward, aimed firmly at Prime. He gave a small, very undetectable shake of his head. "Please stand down. Let them take me. Protect the parents." Optimus Prime's optics blazed for a fraction of a second to acknowledge. The gigantic giant cautiously raised a hand and rested it on Ironhide's massive shoulder, physically restraining the weapons specialist. The whine of the plasma weapon subsided. The Autobots stood their ground, obeying their king's exact orders. "Keep moving, Anomaly," the agent growled, eventually pushing Naruto ahead into the back of the heavily armored Suburban. Sam and Michaela were tossed in the seats opposite him. The huge doors crashed shut, locking with a solid, mechanical thud. The windows were tinted pitch black, leaving the cabin in complete darkness save for the faint glimmer of the tactical equipment. Agent Simmons slid into the front passenger seat and turned around to face his three detainees via the metal divider. "All right, kids," Simmons said, touching the reinforced glass. "You are officially off the grid. The world doesn't know you exist anymore. We're going to take a nice, long drive, and then we are going to have a very invasive conversation about giant alien robots." The convoy of Suburbans lurched into gear, their tires tearing up Ron Witwicky's grass as they accelerated out of the driveway and into the Nevada night. Inside the SUV, Sam was hyperventilating, his head between his legs. Michaela stared blankly at the floorboards, trying not to cry. Naruto reclined on the leather seat, ignoring the heavy steel restraints around his wrists. He closes his eyes. He was not terrified of Sector 7. He was not terrified of Agent Simmons, because as the Suburban accelerated down the interstate, the empty space in Naruto's chest began to hum with fresh, terrible intensity. It wasn't responding to the Autobots anymore. It was reacting to something several miles away. Something enormous. Something ancient. The Allspark. Naruto could feel his heart crying out to him from the depths of the Hoover Dam. And immediately next to it, dormant but emitting a jagged, horrible coldness, was a Decepticon signature so large that Barricade felt like a toy. Sector 7 believed they had captured an oddity. They had no idea they were acting as an escort, delivering the Crown Prince of Cybertron straight to his throne, and right to the monster defending it. The interior of the matte black Chevy Suburban reeked of old coffee, gun oil, and the harsh tang of raw, undiluted terror. Sam Witwicky sat huddled against the reinforced passenger door, his knees tightly drawn up to his chest. He was trembling so hard that his heavy steel shackles reverberated on the flooring. Michaela Baines, beside him, stared blankly at the dark-tinted window, her jaw tight, painfully attempting to keep her breathing regular. Naruto sat across from them, alongside a heavily armed Sector 7 tactical agent. He didn't resemble an adolescent who had recently been kidnapped by a Black Ops government organization. He sat absolutely erect, shoulders relaxed and eyes closed. His wrists sat loosely on his lap, the massive iron cuffs appearing impossibly flimsy against his flesh. He was completely focused on his internal metronome. Thump. 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 The phantom vacuum in his chest wasn't just a dull ache. It was a localized, flaming beacon. Every mile the Suburban traveled farther into the Nevada desert, the attraction became more powerful. It seemed as if a gigantic magnetic was gradually tugging his ribs forward. "You're a cool customer, Anomaly," Agent Simmons said from the front passenger seat, twisting around to look through the metal mesh partition. The dashboard's brightness highlighted Simmons' sharp, arrogant features. Usually, by this point in the ride, the subjects are crying, begging for a lawyer, or wetting themselves. "Your buddy over there is doing 2 out of 3. Sam squeaked angrily, his voice cracking halfway through. Naruto did not open his eyes. He did not respond to the bait. "Where are we going, Agent Simmons?" Simmons chuckled in a dry, humorless tone. "Oh, we don't ask questions here, kid. I ask the questions. For instance, why is my vehicle's rear suspension groaning on the right side? You weigh, what, $160? Yet the shocks on this custom-armored Suburban are compressing like I've got an anvil sitting in your seat." Naruto gently opened his eyes. In the dim light of the cabin, his irises were more than just blue. They appeared to catch the ambient shadows, reflecting a subtle, ethereal luminosity. "I'm dense," Naruto said gently, his voice carrying the weird, resonant bass that echoed through the SUV's metal chassis. Simmons' smirk faded for a split second. He tapped his Geiger counter on the divider. "Yeah, dense with radioactive isotopes. We've been tracking an energy signature matching the NBE's for 48 hours, and it leads right to your chest cavity. You're a battery. A weapon. And Uncle Sam is very interested in how you tick." Naruto leaned forward slightly. The movement was slow, methodical, and completely free of the clunky mechanics of a human teenager. The big tactical agent sitting next to him automatically placed his hand on his holstered sidearm, frightened by the boy's sheer, predatory grace in motion. "You don't know what you have in your basement, do you?" Naruto inquired, his voice lowering to a terrifyingly quiet range. Simmons frowned. "Excuse me? I can feel it," Naruto muttered, glancing beyond Simmons and out the window into the pitch-black desert night. "You're driving me toward my heart. The massive, burning cube of life you've locked in the dark. But, you've locked something else in there with it, haven't you?" Simmons became absolutely inflexible. His face lost its color. "There's a jagged, freezing void right next to the cube," Naruto explained, his glowing blue eyes narrowing as Jubi energy flashed deep within his core. "It feels like crushed iron and hatred. You found a monster in the ice, Simmons. And you brought it inside your house. Shut him up," Simmons yelled at the guard, spinning quickly around in his seat and looking straight ahead. "Nobody talks for the rest of the ride." The SUV sank into a claustrophobic and frightening quiet. Sam glanced at Naruto, stunned by the revelation that his best friend was psychically analyzing a huge, frozen alien warlord from 50 miles away. The desert was far from deserted, even miles behind the Sector 7 convoy. 4 extraterrestrial war machines drove parallel to the highway, blowing up gigantic dust clouds across the scrubland. They traveled with their headlights turned off, traversing the dangerous, uneven desert terrain in complete darkness with modern infrared and starlight optics. Optimus Prime led the way in his towering Peterbilt 379, his gigantic engine roaring with restrained, nervous rage. "This is madness, Prime," Ironhide said, crackling over their encrypted, regional communications network. The black GMC Topkick swerved past large boulders with violent precision. "The humans have put the king in chains. They threaten to dissect the creator's flesh. My cannons are fully charged. Let me intercept the convoy and melt their primitive vehicles into slag." "Negative," Ironhide, Optimus said, his voice tight from the pressure of his own contradictory protocols. "The king gave us a direct, non-verbal command to stand down and let himself be taken. To disobey the crown prince is treason against the Allspark itself." "But why would he surrender?" Ratchet said, the Hummer H2 medical vehicle struggling to keep up with the bigger trucks on the rugged ground. "His biological scans were erratic. He is suppressing an unfathomable amount of Genesis energy. If they subject him to invasive human testing, his autonomous defensive subroutines might trigger. He could level a city block without meaning to. He surrendered to protect the organic lifeforms," Bumblebee's radio said softly, using a synthesized voice. "The king prioritizes his subjects." "Bumblebee is correct," Optimus roared as his gigantic tires crushed a dead cactus into dust. "He chose captivity over a crossfire that would have killed Samuel and Michaela. It is the true mark of the Prime lineage. He possesses the empathy of a god who loves his creations." Optimus Prime's onboard radar beeped. The Sector 7 convoy was turning off the main roadway and heading for the Colorado River. "They are approaching the Hoover Dam," Optimus analyzed, drawing on geographic data from the global satellite network. "A massive concrete hydroelectric structure, but my sensors detect a dampening field. It is a bunker." "Prime," Ironhide's voice lowered to a deadly growl. "If they are taking him into a fortified bunker, they are taking him out of our reach." "We will not abandon the king," Optimus declared, his engine roaring as he accelerated, cresting a big desert dune. "We will track them to the perimeter. If they harm a single layer of his transformium plating, we will tear that dam apart, stone by stone." Autobots maintain stealth pursuit. An hour later, the Sector 7 convoy came to a stop. Naruto sensed the difference in elevation before he saw it. The Suburban began a steep and twisty drop. As they traveled down the canyon roads, the huge, sweeping length of the Hoover Dam became visible through the glass. It was an awe-inspiring feat of human ingenuity, a massive wall of white concrete that held back the crushing weight of Lake Mead. However, Naruto didn't recognize it as a dam. It looked like a tomb. When they drove onto the access road across the top of the dam, the phantom pulse in his chest slammed against his ribs with the ferocity of a sledgehammer. Thump! Naruto gasped, arching his back slightly against the leather seat. "Naruto?" Sam asked excitedly, reaching forward as much as his cuffs would allow. "Are you okay? What's happening?" "It's here," Naruto exclaimed, his voice tight with a powerful combination of pain and profound, cosmic relief. He could feel it permeate the millions of tons of concrete. The Allspark. His lost heart. Primus scooped out an unlimited well of Genesis energy from his chest billions of years ago. It was calling for its due vessel. The caravan did not stop at the tourist center. They drove past the barricades and entered a heavily guarded, clandestine access tunnel dug deep into the bedrock of the Black Canyon. The change from the balmy Nevada night to the subterranean Sector 7 base was abrupt. The air instantly became bone-chillingly cold. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead as the Suburbans descended deeper into the earth, past levels of blast doors and heavily guarded military checkpoints. Finally, the convoy came to a stop in a large, underground concrete garage. "End of the line, kids," Simmons said, opening his door. The tactical agents dragged Sam and Michaela from the SUV. Naruto went out on his own, his heavy footwear striking the concrete floor. The instant his feet reached the ground of the Sector 7 base, the facility's localized dampening shields responded fiercely. Sparks flew from the adjoining electrical transformer box on the wall. The fluorescent lights overhead fluctuated, emitting a frantic, high-pitched whine. Simmons glanced up at the flickering lights and then down at his anomalous energy tracker. The device was smoldering, and the needle was so firmly jammed into the red that the glass faceplate split. Simmons gulped hard and dropped the broken device. "Get them to the observation deck." "Move." They were led through a series of long, sterile concrete halls. The air became colder with each stride. Frost began to accumulate along the edges of the metal blast doors they passed. Naruto moved through the center of the formation, his bright blue eyes fixed straight ahead. He no longer suppressed the Jubi energy. He was allowing it to slowly, painstakingly permeate his human shell. The iron cuffs encircling his wrists began to groan slightly as the heaviness of his forearms increased. He was ready for battle. "Through here," Simmons instructed, swiping a keycard across a large steel door. The hefty vault doors hissed, hydraulic seals loosening as they gradually grind open. A burst of frigid, sub-zero air poured over them, bearing the odor of liquid nitrogen and ancient, corroded metal. Sam and Michaela shuddered uncontrollably, their breath condensing in the cold air as they were pushed into the chamber. It was an observation platform with large, reinforced glass windows overlooking a vast, subterranean hangar bay. "Welcome to Sector 7, Simmons muttered, his smug sneer returning as he approached the glass. "You kids think you're the first ones to discover aliens? We've been babysitting the granddaddy of them all since 1935. Sam stumbled up to the glass, his eyes widening with fear. A monster sat suspended in the center of the vast, freezing hangar beneath them, surrounded by towering cryogenic scaffolding and venting liquid nitrogen pipes. It stood easily 40 feet tall, a jagged, frightening nightmare of gunmetal gray and silver armor. It did not have the same smooth, noble lines of Optimus Prime. It was designed for slaughter, with brutal spikes, enormous fusion cannons, and a face that resembled a mechanical death mask. It was entirely frozen in a block of absolute zero ice. NBE-1, Simmons said triumphantly. Non-biological extraterrestrial 1. We found him in the Arctic ice, the greatest military secret in human history. Megatron, Sam said quietly, the name falling from his lips like a curse. Optimus Prime's holographic history lesson raced through his head. Megatron. He wishes to tear him apart. Michaela stepped back from the glass, hands shielding her lips. Naruto did not back down. He proceeded carefully approached the reinforced glass window, the tactical agents cautiously parting to allow him pass. He paused at the brink, peering down at the frozen warlord. Down in the hangar, separated by 100 feet of air and 2 inches of bulletproof glass, the impossible occurred. Deep beneath the layers of cryogenic ice, Megatron's lifeless, dark optical sensors flashed. A faint, blood-red glow surged through the frozen warlord's eyes. Megatron was not dead. He was in stasis, and the unexpected, overwhelming presence of Genesis energy, the heavenly blood of the king he had spent millennia hunting, was violently restarting his spark processor. Naruto put his tied hands firmly against the cold glass. He did not appear afraid. He resembled a god peering at a captive devil. He's waking up, Naruto murmured quietly, the hefty iron cuffs around his wrists cracking with a harsh crack, the metal tearing away like brittle plastic. Simmons gasped and reached for his sidearm. What did you just do? Before anyone could respond, the viewing deck rocked violently as an enormous, booming alarm klaxon began to sound across the Hoover Dam. The sound of the heavy, reinforced steel handcuffs snapping apart reverberated like a gunshot through the frigid observation deck. The broken shards of metal clattered uselessly on the concrete floor. Agent Simmons did not hesitate. Driven by decades of Sector 7 anxiety, his palm reached for his holster. He drew his sidearm, racking the slide and aiming it straight at Naruto's back. The tactical agents immediately mirrored his movements, a half-dozen assault weapons clicking off their safeties, their laser sights painting Naruto's denim jacket in a sea of red dots. Do not move, Simmons demanded, his voice shrill and raspy. I don't care how much isotope radiation you're leaking, kid. Turn around slowly, or we will put you down. Sam Witwicky threw his hands over his ears and yelled, Don't shoot him. Are you insane? He stopped a giant robot with his arms. Michaela grabbed Sam's collar and aggressively yanked him down to the floor behind a computer station, keeping them out of the crossfire. Naruto did not turn around. He kept his palms pushed flat against the thick, frigid glass that overlooked the hangar. Below them, buried inside the monolithic block of absolute zero ice, the blood-red optics of NBE-1, Megatron, glowed brighter with each second. The klaxons continued to sound, illuminating the observation deck in rhythmic flashes of emergency red light. "Simmons," Naruto replied gently. His voice lacked the resounding authority of a ruler demanding loyalty. It sounded unnaturally peaceful, with a terrible, ancient presence. "Your cryo systems are failing. You brought the blood of his creator right to his doorstep. He is waking up." "I said turn around," Simmons shouted, his finger firmly gripping the trigger. Naruto slowly turned. His human facade was straining to remain intact. The veins running up his neck pulsed with beautiful, ethereal blue light. His eyes, which were normally a brilliant, cheerful blue, were suddenly glowing like two small stars. "I don't want to hurt you," Naruto said, moving away from the glass. He did not look at the guns. He gazed past Simmons to the large, well-shut blast doors at the far end of the viewing platform. The magnetic pull was excruciating now. The phantom gap inside his ribcage was more than just aching. It was tearing him apart on the inside, wanting to be complete. "Fire!" Simmons demanded, panic finally overcoming his desire for a live specimen. Two tactical operatives pulled the triggers. Bang, bang. Sparks flew. However, there was no blood. The 9mm shots hit Naruto squarely in the chest. However, when the lead contacted his clothing, the human illusion disintegrated dramatically in localized patches. The bullets were caught by the flawless, white-gold transformium plating that rippled across the surface. The shots flattened on his metallic skin, like soft clay hitting solid steel, and fell harmlessly to the floor. Simmons froze, his rifle trembling in his grip. What are you?" "I am incomplete," Naruto muttered. He did not wait for them to reload. Naruto advanced with a scary, hydraulic blur of speed. He did not throw any punches. He simply strolled right through the line of tactical agents. Two men in heavy armor tried to take him down. It was like trying to stop a freight train that was already underway. Naruto's density was so great that it didn't even move. The agents hit him hard on the shoulders and bounced off, hitting the concrete floor hard and groaning in pain like they had just raced straight into a brick wall. Naruto got to the huge, multi-ton blast doors that led to the room next door. They were secured down with massive magnetic bolts that could handle a nuclear shockwave. He put his hands, which had now turned into shiny, white gold gauntlets, against the thick steel seam. He didn't use a keyboard. He didn't ask for a keycard. Naruto held on to the edges of the steel plates, and his bright blue eyes narrowed. The Jubi energy flowed into his mechanical muscles. Creak. Everyone in the room was deafened by the horrible sound of metal ripping. Sam looked over the computer console, and his jaw dropped in horror as he witnessed his best friend tear open a nuclear blast door with his own hands. The massive magnetic bolts broke like dry twigs. Naruto pushed the huge steel doors aside, making a space that was just big enough for him to fit through. He walked into the dark. Simmons stood still, his gun lowered, and his pompous perspective of the universe was completely and utterly broken. He muttered to a shocked agent on the floor, "Call command. Tell them NBE-1 isn't the only god in the building," they said. The room behind the blast doors was nothing like the chilly, clean hangar where Megatron was. It was a huge, enormous vault, at least the size of a football stadium, cut right into the bedrock. Naruto's breath seized in his throat as he stepped through the broken doors. The Allspark was in the middle of the room. It was a huge, flawless cube that rose hundreds of feet into the air. The surface was a beautiful tapestry of silver-blue metal that changed shape and had millions of old Cybertronian glyphs carved into it. It sent forth a deep, buzzing warmth that made the air itself shake. Dozens of Sector 7 scientists in white lab coats were running around the scaffolding at the base of the cube, freaking out because the abrupt energy spikes were ruining their instruments. But the terror ceased when Naruto came in. The Allspark did something. The quiet, background hum of the huge object suddenly turned into a lovely, resonant chord. It sounded like a huge, cosmic choir singing one flawless note. The millions of characters carved across its surface lit up, giving forth a bright blue light that was hard to see. "The king has come." The voice didn't come from a radio. It rang out in Naruto's head. Naruto's eyes were watery. He didn't care about the history or the science behind it. The empty, painful, lonely hole in his chest felt like home for the first time in his 17 years of life. He moved gently to the bottom of the scaffolding, completely disregarding the scared scientists who were backing away from him. His human face entirely melted away. His denim jacket and t-shirt fell off as he moved, showing the beautiful and scary truth about his body. His whole body was covered in white gold transformium armor with deep, brilliant blue circuits running through it. He didn't look like a blocky robot, he looked like a silver god shaped like a man. He stopped at the very bottom of the tall cube. He reached out with his right hand and put his palm flat against the warm, vibrating metal of the Allspark. "I'm here," Naruto muttered, his voice breaking with anguish. "Give it back." The Allspark didn't get smaller. It didn't fold into a smaller cube like it was supposed to for weaker beings. It knew who made it. As soon as Naruto's skin touched it, the huge artifact that seemed like a building started to melt. It lost its hard, geometric shape and became into a swirling, gravitational singularity of pure, dazzling blue light. The scientists shouted and covered their eyes as the light became so intense that it lit up the cave like it was day. The huge, whirling vortex of liquid light quickly shrank down to a little, burning orb of Genesis energy that was about the size of a basketball. The sphere hit Naruto's chest with a sound like a thunderclap. Naruto's back bent back hard. The Allspark went right through his armor and locked flawlessly into the empty, ghostly grotto waiting just below his ribs. He let out a breathless, echoing gasp. The fusion happened right away. The son of Primus took a full breath for the first time in billions of years. It was impossible to describe how it felt. He didn't simply feel heavy anymore. He felt like he was everywhere. He could feel the Earth's heartbeat under his feet. He could feel the electricity flowing through the Hoover Dam. He could hear the faint, far-off voices of Optimus Prime and the Autobots talking on the radio while they waited outside the fence. He felt whole. But the joining of a deity and his heart couldn't happen without a sound. Naruto's chest sent out a huge, invisible shockwave of pure Genesis energy. The wave tore through the underground vault, breaking every lighting, frying every computer server, and shattering the strong glass in the observation deck above. The shockwave spread out, covering the whole Hoover Dam. The huge hydropower turbines faltered and stopped working. The electrical grid for half of Nevada went down and then came back on. The base was plunged into complete, suffocating blackness, with only the faint, eerie glimmer of emergency backup lights to illuminate the way. Naruto stood in the middle of the black vault, and his chest glowed so brightly that it lit up the granite walls. He stared down at his silver hands and made fists with them. He could feel a whole new set of biological weapons coming online in his head. He could feel the frightening, latent force of the 10 tails moving just below the surface of his human form, wanting to be let out. But before he could understand how powerful he was, he heard a noise coming from the hangar next door. It wasn't a siren. There wasn't an explosion. It was the horrible, jagged sound of 10-foot thick cryogenic ice breaking apart violently. Crack. Crush. A mechanical shout of pure, undiluted hate and victory shook the bedrock and made dust fall from the roof. I am Megatron. The warlord was up. The power grid had gone down. The shockwave had broken the pipelines carrying liquid nitrogen, and NBE-1 was finally free from his frozen captivity. Naruto gently turned his head to look at the jagged hole he had made in the blast doors with his brilliant blue eyes. He could hear the Decepticon leader's huge, booming footsteps breaking the scaffolding in the room next door. Megatron wasn't trying to get away from the base. He could feel the Allspark. He could smell Primus's blood, and he was headed right for the vault. Naruto roared, "Sam, Michaela." His voice was suddenly booming with the undiluted, resonant authority of the king, rocking the walls of the room. Get off the observation deck right now. It was no longer time to hide. The gladiator was at the door, and the king had his heart. The emergency klaxon's wailing was deafening. It was a frenetic, rhythmic shriek that echoed off the millions of tons of concrete that surrounded Sector 7. But there was a much scarier sound that shook the bedrock beneath the sirens. Crrrrack. That was the sound of a glacier breaking up. There was absolute chaos on the observation deck above the cryogenic hangar. The 2-inch thick bulletproof glass that looked down on the chamber had broken because of the shockwave that Naruto sent out when he absorbed the Allspark. There were pieces of safety glass all over the concrete floor. Agent Simmons was on his knees with his hands over his ears, and his haughty perspective of the world was completely shattered. The tactical agents were running around in the backup generators flashing red strobe lights without knowing where they were going. Sam Witwicky didn't pay any attention to them. He army crawled over the broken glass, dragging Michaela Baines with him, till they got to the sharp edge of the broken window. They looked down into the huge hangar. The Genesis pulse from the Allspark had blasted apart the scaffolding made of liquid nitrogen. Thick, blinding clouds of white frozen vapor fell on the floor. A creature sprang from the middle of the fog, releasing huge chunks of ice that were as cold as death. NBE-1. Megatron. He was huge, at least 40 feet tall, with jagged, gunmetal gray armor covered in vicious spikes and hefty fusion cannons. He didn't look like Optimus Prime, who was noble and blocky. Megatron was made to look like a living weapon, a walking nightmare with sharp angles and gears that were always churning. The warlord unleashed a mechanical roar that was so deep and full of static that it made Sam's teeth rattle in his head. Megatron stretched his huge, clawed claws, breaking up the final bits of ice that were holding his joints back. His optical shutters opened up, revealing two searing, blood-red eyes. He didn't seem confused when he woke up all of a sudden. He looked like he was about to explode with wrath. He took a huge, loud step forward, and his digitigrade foot crushed a steel catwalk like it was made of tinfoil. He came to a stop. His ears twitched. His fiery eyes quickly moved away from the broken observation deck and focused on the huge hole Naruto had made in the blast doors that led to the vault. Megatron could smell it. The smell of unrefined energon. The Allspark's heavenly frequency is so bright that it blinds you. And underneath it all, the biological signature of the creator he had been attempting to find and kill for thousands of years. The vessel, Megatron said in a voice that was a terrifying mix of metal grinding and deep bass. My. Megatron didn't saunter toward the vault, he lunged. He crossed the 100-foot hangar in 3 big steps, lowering his heavily armored shoulder. He hit the steel blast doors that Naruto had partially opened with a bang. Boom. The whole Hoover Dam seemed to shake. The heavy steel doors were wrenched off their magnetic hinges and flew into the Allspark vault, where they crashed against the far cavern wall with a loud screech of twisted metal. Naruto stood in the middle of the black vault, which was only lit up by the bright blue light coming from his chest. Compared to the huge Decepticon, he appeared very little. His clothes were gone, and in their stead was the perfect white gold transformium armor that was his real skin. The bright blue circuits surged quickly across his arms and neck, perfectly in time with the beating of his new, endless heart. Megatron walked inside the vault, and the stone shook with each heavy stride. He gazed down at the human-like form, and his red eyes narrowed in contempt. "Look at you," Megatron said with a voice full of hatred and scorn. He leaned forward, and his jagged face was only a few feet away from Naruto. The so-called Crown Prince, a pathetic, fleshy imitation. Primus was a fool to hide his power in something so fragile. You are not a god. You are a battery. I am going to rip that cube out of your chest, piece by agonizing piece. Naruto didn't move. The empty space in his chest was gone. Instead, there was a roaring fire of cosmic energy. He could feel the dreadful, dormant instincts of the 10 tails moving around in his head. They were the basic need to grow, to spread out, and to crush the bug in front of him with tails the size of skyscrapers. But he couldn't. If he changed into the Jubi here, deep inside the bedrock, the weight of his real body would instantly cause the cave to collapse. The Hoover Dam would burst, Lake Mead would flood the valley, and 1,000,000 tons of stone would fall on Sam and Michaela. He had to face a gladiator who was 40 feet tall with a body that was only 6 feet tall. Naruto replied softly, "You talk too much." Megatron screamed in anger. He didn't pull out a weapon. Instead, he just raised his huge, clawed palm and slammed it down at Naruto in a powerful backhand, aiming to knock the youngster across the room and break every bone in his human body. Naruto didn't move out of the way. He put his feet down, and the white gold armor dug 3 inches into the hard concrete floor. He raised his left arm to protect himself from the blow. Bang! The effect was like the end of the world. A visible shockwave of compressed air erupted outward, knocking the last scientists in Sector 7 off their feet and sending computer mainframes flying like leaves in the fall. Sam and Michaela shrieked as the shockwave knocked them back into the broken glass on the observation deck. The dust cleared in the vault. Naruto hadn't moved an inch. His arm was still up straight, blocking Megatron's huge, multi-ton wrist. Naruto's transformium structure was so dense that it perfectly absorbed all of the kinetic energy. Megatron's red eyes widened in real, hard-coded shock. The Decepticon warlord tried to press down, but the small, luminous figure under him was as solid as a mountain. His huge shoulder servos were about to break. Naruto said softly, "It's my turn." Naruto pulled back his right arm. He didn't know how to fight like a Cybertronian. He had never trained in the gladiatorial pits of Kaon. But he possessed raw, unfathomable power, and his muscles remembered how to hold back like a teenage guy who had spent his whole life doing it. He stopped being shy. Naruto raised his blazing, white gold fist and smacked Megatron's heavily armored knee joint with a crushing uppercut. The vault resonated with the sound of metal breaking. Megatron screamed in pain, with static mixed in. The armor around his knee broke, and bright blue energon fluid spilled out onto the floor. The huge Decepticon fell back, his huge weight crashing into the rock wall of the cave and making the ceiling creak alarmingly. "Insolent sparkling!" Megatron yelled. His disbelief quickly turned into homicidal, arrogant hatred. The warlord got better at a terrifyingly fast rate. He understood that it was a mistake to try to force the king to do something in close quarters. The armor plates on Megatron's right arm moved back, revealing a huge, glaring purple fusion cannon. The cannon made a whining noise as it charged, getting power straight from Megatron's evil spark. "Naruto, move!" Sam screamed from the broken window above. Naruto gazed at his teammates, then back at the fusion cannon's glowing barrel. If Megatron used that weapon in this small environment, the plasma splash damage would kill everyone in the room. The Jubi's instincts kicked in. Naruto didn't think. He just did what he had to do. He pushed both of his hands forward. The Genesis energy that was throbbing in his chest rushed down his arms and into his palms. He didn't know the Cybertronian word for that, but his soul did. He was turning pure, raw energy into a small, powerful sphere. A small, bright blue-tailed beast bomb formed between his mechanical hands. "Get away from them!" Naruto yelled. Just as Megatron fired his fusion cannon, he let loose the orb of pure Allspark energy. The two beams of energy hit each other in the middle of the vault. The blast was so bright that it blinded me. A sphere of blue and purple plasma that was all over the place and twisting grew outward, devouring the concrete, melting the steel scaffolding, and making the air very hot. The blast was so strong that it took Megatron off his feet, even though he was very big. The Decepticon warlord was flung back hard, slamming through the broken blast doors and sliding across the floor of his frozen hangar. Naruto was thrown back 10 feet, and his boots dug large holes on the pavement, yet he stayed standing. His chest was pounding, and the white gold armor on his chest was smoldering from the heat of the plasma contact. The ceiling of the vault above them started to break. Huge pieces of concrete and bedrock fell from the sky and hit the floor. The dam was not holding up well. Naruto exclaimed, "We have to go." As he looked up at the viewing deck, "Sam, Michaela, get to the tunnels right now." Megatron was already getting up from the floor of the hangar next door. His armor was burned, his knee was oozing energon, and his pride was hurt in a way that would never heal. A humanoid ship had hurled him across a room, but Megatron lived through it. He peered up at the ceiling, which was falling apart, and knew that the cave was about to fall on him. He wouldn't take the chance of getting buried again. Megatron's body moved violently with a loud, angry growl. Arms locked into a smooth, aerodynamic frame. His legs became into massive thrusters. In 3 seconds, the warlord had turned into a huge Cybertronian jet with a lot of armor. A dazzling flash of purple light lit up the jet's thrusters, melting the floor underneath him. Megatron didn't shoot at the tunnels, he aimed straight up. He shot his fusion cannons into the roof, making a huge, jagged crater in the concrete and bedrock. He shot himself straight up through the hole, ripping through the Hoover Dam in order to get to the surface, rejoin with his Decepticons, and kill the king in the open air. The cave was falling apart. There was a lot of dust and debris in the air. Naruto looked about in a panic. Agents from Sector 7 were running away into the tunnels that were just for emergencies. Sam and Michaela were no longer on the observation platform. They were probably following Simmons into the escape passages. Naruto put a hand on his chest. The Allspark made a humming sound that felt warm and comforting against his palm. He got his heart back, but he had just let the devil out on Earth. Naruto jumped toward the huge, vertical tunnel that Megatron had just ripped through the roof with a burst of hydraulic power. He gripped the broken concrete and rebar and used his horrifying solidity to pull himself up, climbing out of the tomb that was falling apart to meet the war that was waiting for him on the surface. The Hoover Dam's crushed concrete and twisted rebar should have ripped a person to shreds as they climbed up. But Naruto was no longer a person. His fingers, which were covered in perfect white gold transformium, bore into the solid bedrock as it was wet clay. He pulled his massive, thick body up with horrifying, hydraulic efficiency. The Allspark buzzed inside his chest. It was a perfect, endless blue Genesis energy sphere that sent raw power to every artificial cell in his body. He wasn't tired. He felt like a sun had just started to burn inside his ribs. Naruto pushed himself out of the jagged hole that Megatron had blasted through the dam's surface with one last, huge push. He fell in a crouch on the broken asphalt of the tourist roadway that runs across the top of the huge building. The cool, clear night air of Nevada flowed over his shining, metal armor. For a split second, there was no sound at all. Then, the screeching roar of alien thrusters split the sky in two. Naruto looked up. The jagged, scary silhouette of Megatron in his Cybertronian jet mode stood out against the huge, full moon. The Decepticon warlord didn't run away. He was circling back and making a fast turn over Lake Mead. Megatron wasn't going to risk getting into another fight in a small vault. He was going to blow the top of the dam and bury the king in 1,000,000 tons of rubble. Then he would sift through the ashes to get the Allspark back. As Megatron charged his main heavy weapons, the bottom of the aircraft started to flash with dazzling, furious purple plasma. "I will turn you into slag." Megatron's voice, full of static, echoed across the dark water of the reservoir. Naruto straightened up, his blue eyes fixed on the plane that was coming down. The phantom void in his mind, the old, basic instincts of the 10 Tails, came to life. The Allspark saw that its ship was in danger. It didn't just give energy. It also helped people adjust. The instinct told him to protect. Grow. Naruto made a loud, mechanical gasp. He bent his back and threw his arms out to the sides. The white gold transformium plating on his back suddenly came off. There wasn't any blood or gore, just a bright flash of pure blue Genesis energy and the loud sound of heavy gear moving. From his back sprung 3 huge, flexible limbs. They weren't composed of chakra. They were mechanical tails that were each at least 30 feet long and as thick as a redwood tree trunk. They were made of jagged, interlocking plates of silver and gold metal that were joined together by blazing, flexible joints that changed the direction of gravity and blue plasma. They thrashed around in the air behind him, and the heavy, blade-like tips left deep gouges in the asphalt just by brushing against it. He couldn't show all 10 without breaking the dam because of his own localized gravity, but 3 were more than plenty. Naruto didn't even have to think about controlling them. They moved like his own nervous system, following the Allspark's divine will. Naruto didn't duck for cover when Megatron swooped down and fired a bunch of purple plasma bolts. He put his feet down and turned his body. The 3 mechanical tails moved forward as quickly as a snake strikes. The sound of their movement was so loud that it broke the windshields of every empty tourist automobile parked on the dam. Bang! The first tail's heavy, sharp tip hit the plasma bolts and blew them up safely over the ocean. The second and third tails hit their mark. They hit Megatron's jet mode right in the belly. The sound of alien armor bending resonated through the canyon. The impact was so strong that it completely changed Megatron's aerodynamic path. Megatron screamed as the Jubi tail's localized gravity pulled him out of the sky and made his jet splutter. The warlord violently changed back into his bipedal gladiator form in midair to prepare for the crash. He smashed onto the dam's asphalt highway 100 yards distant, skidding in a huge spray of orange sparks that tore up the road and crushed concrete barricades until he hit the canyon wall. Naruto stood tall, his chest heaving, and his 3 huge metal tails swayed behind him like armored vipers, ready to attack. He had just knocked a 40-foot alien warlord out of the sky with a metal mosquito. Megatron grumbled as he pushed the rubble off of his body. His fiery eyes were full with a mix of pure fury and a slow, unmistakable fear. He was staring at the Prince of Cybertron, who was finally starting to show his teeth. Megatron raised his fusion weapon and got ready to unleash a last-ditch shot from close range. But he never got the chance. Hunk! The loud blast of a special train horn broke the tension. A huge red and blue Peterbilt 379 semi-truck came out of the shadows of the canyon access road, its engine roaring like a caged animal. Optimus Prime kept going. He stepped on the gas, and the big tires left black streaks of smoke across the road. Optimus changed right before he attacked Megatron. The Autobot leader, who was 28 feet tall, jumped into the air, and his battle mask slid into place. Optimus smashed Megatron's faceplate with both of his huge, metal fists in a powerful double hammer assault. "Stay away from him," Optimus yelled. The Prime's surprise attack pushed Megatron back into the canyon wall, where the stone broke under the pressure. The remainder of the cavalry showed there right away. As Bumblebee, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Jazz morphed into their bipedal forms, they screeched their tires and formed a heavily armed, semicircular defense cordon around Naruto. Ironhide loaded his big guns and aimed them right at the Decepticon leader, who was getting better. "Just say the word, Your Grace, and I'll paint this canyon with his energon." Naruto took a long, deep breath. With a thought, the 3 huge, mechanical tails effortlessly pulled back and folded back into his spine with a succession of sharp, mechanical clicks. The white-gold armor on his back fit perfectly. The huge steel doors of the dam's tourist center broke open before Naruto could give an order. Sam Witwicky, Michaela Baines, and Agent Simmons, who was absolutely astonished, staggered out onto the sidewalk. They were able to find their way down the emergency stairs in the middle of the turmoil. Sam gazed at the huge Autobots, the flaming hole in the ground where Optimus had locked Megatron against the wall, and finally at Naruto. His best friend was still shining, dressed head to toe in shiny, white-gold extraterrestrial armor. Sam cried, "Naruto," as he ran toward him, stopping just short of the Autobot fence. Are you still you in there?" Sam gazed at Naruto. The blue circuits that were glowing slowly faded away. The white-gold transformium rippled and turned back into the peach-colored skin, denim jacket, and white t-shirt that everyone knew. He appeared like a normal person again, but the deep, old weight in his blue eyes stayed the same. "It's me, Sam," Naruto murmured quietly, giving a tired grin to calm him down. "I've gotten my heart back." "Interesting," Ratchet said softly as he looked at Naruto with his light green laser. "The Allspark has completely merged with his biomechanical matrix. He is a walking, infinite well of creation." Optimus Prime backed back from Megatron, who was stuck under a pile of rubble and groaning in static-filled rage. Optimus knelt down and turned to Naruto. "My king, Megatron is out of commission for now, but he has already sent a signal. The other Decepticons are on their way here. We're out in the open in the desert." "He's right," Agent Simmons said as he stepped forward. He looked quite pale, and all of his arrogance had been taken away. He didn't see Naruto as a teenager, he saw him as a scary, walking nuclear weapon. "We listened to Decepticon chatter on the way up. Starscream, Bonecrusher, Brawl. They're all coming. If they see us, they'll kill us." Naruto stared at his devoted warriors and then at his weak human buddies. The king inside him was now fully awake. He knew exactly what the tactical situation was. "We need a place to hide the Allspark's energy signature," Naruto said, his voice full of power. "A place with enough background radio frequency and thermal noise to keep their long-range scanners from seeing me." Sam yelled out, "Mission City," recalling where it was. "It's 20 miles away. There are a lot of people there and a lot of power lines. It'll mess up their sensors. Then we move," Naruto said to Optimus Prime. "We go back to Mission City. We protect the people there and make our last stand." "Autobots," Optimus yelled as he stood up tall and proud. "Change and roll out." Black asphalt and bright lighting made the Nevada highway look like a blur. The Autobot convoy sped through the desert night at speeds of more than 100 miles per hour, with their motors roaring in a synchronized, thundering symphony. Optimus Prime led the way, his huge Peterbilt body taking up most of the lanes. Ironhide, Ratchet, and Jazz made a tight, impenetrable circle around their leader, with Bumblebee on his right side. The mood inside Optimus Prime's huge cab was very strained. Sam and Michaela were curled up in the sleeper cab behind the driver's seats. The adrenaline from their escape from the Hoover Dam was now wearing off, and they were tired and scared. Agent Simmons sat still in the passenger seat, holding on to the door handle so firmly that his knuckles became white. He was still trying to wrap his head around the reality that he was inside an extraterrestrial giant and following the orders of a 17-year-old lad. Naruto was behind the wheel. Optimus was driving himself, so he didn't have his hands on the wheel. But Naruto's bright blue eyes were fixed on the dark horizon. The ghostly vacuum was no longer there. Instead, the Allspark throbbed with an endless flow of Genesis energy. It seemed like a second heartbeat, sending raw, holy energy into every mechanical cell of his transformium body. He felt quite anchored, and his senses were getting stronger. He could feel the vibrations of the tires on the asphalt, the hum of the power lines that ran next to the highway, and the radio frequencies that were all over the place and jagged coming from the desert behind them. "The Decepticons are getting ready to fight," said Optimus Prime's deep voice through the cabin speakers. "Megatron has sent out our path. They're looking for the Allspark's signature." Naruto stated quietly, "We'll lose them in Mission City. The thermal noise and localized M fields of a 3 million person grid will blind their long-range scanners. We just need to get there." The temperature inside the cab suddenly rose. Naruto's Allspark pulse skipped a beat. A huge, sharp blast of pure, unfiltered mechanical hatred hit his newly awakened senses. It was a frequency so harsh and violent that it seemed like gears churning within his head. "Contact rear," Ironhide said over the secure comms. "Heavy Decepticon signature closing in fast. He's cutting through the civilian traffic." Naruto stared into the huge side mirror. A huge, tan-colored Buffalo H military mine-sweeping vehicle was violently pushing through traffic on the highway 3 miles behind us. It wasn't going around the civilian automobiles, it was going through them. A huge hydraulic forklift claw on the front of the car was throwing sedans and minivans aside like trash, which produced fiery pileups behind it. It was Bonecrusher, the Decepticon who hates everything. Optimus thought, "He is catching up to us," as his engine revved up. "Autobots, stay in formation. Protect the king and the people. I will fall back and stop the enemy." Naruto said right away, "No." The one word boomed through the cab, sounding like the deep, powerful voice of the Genesis energy. Optimus Prime's engine stuttered, and his internal protocols quickly obeyed the king's order. "Naruto, what are you doing?" Sam screamed from the rear, peering over the chairs. "Let the big robot battle the other big robot." "Sam, he's going for the Allspark," Naruto stated as he unbuckled his seatbelt. "Optimus will catch up with you and surround you if he slows down to fight him. You need to keep going to the city." Naruto rose up in the roomy cab and looked at the dashboard. "Optimus," Naruto murmured, his voice lowering to utter majesty. "Keep driving. Do not slow down. Keep my friends safe." "That is a direct order." "My king, you cannot," Optimus insisted, his voice tinged with ancient, paternal panic. "Open the door, Prime." For a split second, the ancient Autobot leader hesitated. However, Primus Air wielded absolute authority. The semi-truck's driver's side door slid open with a hefty, metallic hiss, exposing the screaming wind and the blur of the asphalt rushing by at 120 mph. "Naruto. Wait," Michaela exclaimed. Naruto did not glance back. He got out of the cab and jumped into the night. To a human, jumping from a vehicle going at that speed meant certain death. The kinetic energy alone would fracture every bone in the body on impact. But as Naruto dropped into the highway, the human illusion dissipated. The white-gold transformium plating rippled across his skin, rapidly solidifying into perfect, aerodynamic armor. Deep blue circuitry sprung to life across his chest and arms. His density increased dramatically, packing the mass of a Cybertronian titan into a 6-foot frame. He made contact with the asphalt. Crack, he did not roll. He did not bounce. Naruto landed in the ideal three-point superhero crouch. The sheer weight of his landing shattered the highway, launching chunks of blacktop into the air as he dragged his metal fingers across the road to slow his pace. Sparks shot like fireworks as his boots ground against the asphalt, digging twin tunnels into the pavement before coming to a complete stop. He stood up carefully. The Autobot caravan roared past him, its brake lights fading into the distance as Optimus Prime diligently carried out the king's final instruction. Naruto was completely alone on the dark roadway. A mile down the road, the huge, tan-colored minesweeper noticed him. Bonecrusher didn't care if his victim wasn't a gigantic robot. His senses sensed the Allspark's dazzling, heavenly light as it stood directly in his path. With a deafening blast of its air horn, the Buffalo H accelerated, its giant hydraulic claw lowering to scrape across the asphalt, ready to scoop up the humanoid figure and crush him into paste. Hate. I hate the creator. Bonecrusher's static-laced, demonic voice screamed over his external speakers. Naruto remained completely still in the center of the lane. He did not brace himself, he didn't take a fighting position. He just let his arms dangle lightly at his sides, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He could feel the Allspark swirling in his chest, he had more than simply physical strength. He also possessed the power of localized physics, he was a Jubi. The enormous Decepticon vehicle was 50 yards away, 30 yards, 10 yards. As the massive steel claw was poised to impale him, Naruto opened his sparkling blue eyes. He raised his right hand and moved forward into the contact. He grasped the center prong of Bonecrusher's huge mind-sweeping claw with his bare hand. The collision defied all human physical laws. A surge of compressed air erupted outward, knocking the guardrails off the side of the road. Bonecrusher, a vehicle weighing more than 30 tons and traveling at 80 miles per hour, came to a violent, abrupt halt. The big truck's back wheels rose completely off the ground, and the chassis screamed as the kinetic energy had nowhere to go. Naruto had not been pushed back 1 inch. His white gold boots were fastened to the asphalt like they were bolted to the center of the earth. "You hate the creator?" Naruto inquired, his voice a scary, low rumble that echoed across Bonecrusher's metal hull. Bonecrusher panicked. The Decepticon violently began his change phase, wanting to break free and use his massive strength to crush the oddity. Tires moved, armor plates folded, and the big vehicle began to rise, transforming into a towering, jagged roller skating nightmare. But Naruto refused to release grip of the claw. As Bonecrusher attempted to stand, Naruto tightened his grip. His white gold transformium fingers simply shattered the massive Decepticon steel, leaving deep, lighting blue handprints in it. Naruto pushed down with great difficulty. The Jubi's incredible strength rushed through his little frame. He yanked the 30-ton Decepticon off balance during its metamorphosis. Bonecrusher screamed as he was mercilessly pushed face first into the highway. The concrete broke under the Decepticon's massive weight. Naruto stepped forward, smoothly vaulting atop Bonecrusher's enormous, jagged back. He slammed his glowing, metallic palm into the base of the Decepticon's neck armor. "Let me show you what you're hating," Naruto said quietly. He released a concentrated burst of Genesis energy, not a destructive blast, but a clean, unadulterated wave of Allspark frequency. The divine blue light struck squarely at Bonecrusher's tainted spark. For a Decepticon fueled solely by anger and dark energon, the abrupt injection of pure, holy creation was excruciating pain. It was like pouring holy water on a devil. Bonecrusher let out a terrifying, glitchy scream. His crimson eyes blinked wildly, and his limbs spasmed as the sheer, blinding brilliance of the king's soul fully overwhelmed his internal processors. Bonecrusher's sights went dark with a final howl of static. The enormous Decepticon went utterly limp on the highway, his systems forced into an emergency stasis lock to keep his spark from short-circuiting. Naruto stood over the fallen Decepticon, the blue circuitry in his armor gradually dimming. He took a deep breath, and the desert wind cooled his overheated metal skin. He had just defeated one of Megatron's most powerful opponents without firing a single shot, relying just on his bare fists and the weight of his own existence. Naruto gazed down the roadway. The Autobot convoy had long vanished, leaving only the shimmering, distant skyline of Mission City. The king had purchased their time. Now he needed to catch up. With a strong leap that splintered Bonecrusher's armor beneath his boots, Naruto pushed himself down the highway, his robotic legs propelling him at terrible speeds towards the final battleground. Naruto saw the Nevada desert blur past him in a streak of silver and gold. Running at nearly 100 miles per hour should have been a violent and chaotic experience. The wind resistance alone should have ripped his garments apart and blinded his eyes. However, Naruto's body was rewriting the world's physics rather than resisting them. His white-gold transformium legs pumped with the rhythmic accuracy of a highly evolved engine. Every time his boots hit the road, the hefty force was immediately absorbed and turned into forward speed by the minuscule servos stitched beneath his skin. He did not breathe heavily. He didn't sweat. The allspark burning in his chest created an unlimited, self-sustaining cycle of perfect energy. He was a god learning how to stroll across his own country. Ahead of him, the dark horizon gave way to the blazing, amber light pollution of Mission City. The shift from the peaceful desert to the hectic, densely populated metropolitan grid was abrupt. The smell of exhaust, heated pavement, and millions of intersecting radio frequencies filled the air. Naruto's pace decreased as he approached the city limits, his titanium boots sparkling on the concrete before he fell into a steady, silent jog. He forced the Jubi energy down into his center. The flashing blue circuitry on his arms faded, and the white gold armor blended back into his denim jacket, white t-shirt, and human skin. He needed to blend in. The city was a tangle of skyscrapers, tiny streets, and anxious residents. He followed the resonant, familiar hum of Optimus Prime's Spark, winding his way through the congested traffic. He spotted them 3 blocks deep in the financial district. The Autobot convoy had formed a defensive circle in a large junction. Sam and Michaela were standing behind Ironhide's big tires, looking afraid but unhurt. They were surrounded by a squad of heavily armed human soldiers, including Captain Lennox, Epps, and the survivors of Kata's Special Operations Team. The soldiers appeared absolutely perplexed, pointing their weapons nervously at the massive, idle vehicles. Agent Simmons was in the middle of the tumultuous crowd, yelling into a scrambled satellite radio. "I don't care about airspace clearance," Simmons exclaimed. "I have NBEs in the city and a walking nuclear anomaly on the loose. I need gunships here yesterday." "Simmons, shut up," Lennox exclaimed, grabbing the Sector 7 man by his tactical vest. "My men are dying, the radios are jammed, and these giant machines are the only things standing between us and whatever wiped out my base in the desert. We need a plan." Before Simmons could respond, a loud, resounding thud resonated throughout the junction. Naruto descended from the roof of a 3-story parking garage, landing precisely in the middle of the human warriors. The sheer force of his landing broke the asphalt beneath his footwear, creating a spiderweb of fractures that spread over the street. Immediately, a dozen assault guns swung toward him. "Hold your fire," Sam yelled, pushing past Epps and sprinting towards Naruto. "He's with us. He's the good guy." Lennox kept his weapon elevated, his gaze shifting from the adolescent to the big alien trucks around them. "Sam. Who is this kid? Why did he just crack the pavement by jumping off a building?" Naruto stood up slowly. He did not look at the guns. He stared directly at Optimus Prime's Peterbilt grille. "You kept them safe," Naruto whispered gently, his voice carrying the peculiar, resonant bass that made everyone's chests vibrate. "Thank you, Optimus." The enormous semi-truck's engine purred with adoration. With a symphony of grinding gears and shifting armor, Optimus Prime transformed in the center of the junction. The 28-foot Titan squatted down on the shattered asphalt, his flashing blue vision focused on Naruto. "The honor is mine, my king," Optimus said solemnly. "Bonecrusher's signature has vanished from our scanners. You fought him alone? He won't be a problem anymore," Naruto explained calmly, straightening his denim jacket. Lennox, Epps, and the rest of the Special Operations Team stood motionless. They had just witnessed a 30-foot extraterrestrial war machine fall to its knees and treat a high school teenager as royalty. "Okay, I'm officially losing my mind," Epps mumbled, gradually lowering his rifle. "The giant alien truck is taking orders from a kid in a denim jacket?" "He's not a kid," Simmons said softly, his voice quivering as he glanced at Naruto. He's the battery. He absorbed the cube. He is walking, talking, localized apocalypse. Naruto turned to confront the soldiers. The faint, ethereal blue radiance permeated his irises, illuminating the black street. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," he continued, his voice exuding the total, unquestioned power of the throne. "The warlord Megatron has awakened. He is coming to this city to rip my heart out of my chest, and he will slaughter every human in his path to do it. We are not running anymore, we make our stand here. Evacuate the civilians from this sector immediately." Lennox gulped hard. He was a seasoned military leader, yet the boy's presence was impossible to ignore. It demanded obedience at the molecular level. Lennox nodded sharply. "Eps. Get on the horn. Tell local PD to clear a 10-block radius. Establish a perimeter." But before the soldiers could react, a terrible, high-pitched cry ripped across the sky above the towers. "Screech." Epps raised his head, gazing at the thin strip of sky visible between the glass buildings. "Incoming. Fast movers. F-22 Raptors. It's the Air Force." A soldier exclaimed. "We've got air support." "No, we don't." Epps exclaimed, elevating his binoculars. "The comms are still jammed." "That's not one of ours. Those aren't friendly." Two enormous F-22 Raptors banked rapidly around a glass tower, their engines screaming as they dove straight for the crossroads. But they didn't fly like regular jets. They moved with jagged, predatory ferocity, challenging aerodynamic limits. Starscream, Megatron's treacherous second in command, led the aerial assault. "Take cover," Lennox exclaimed, ducking behind a concrete wall. The Autobots swiftly switched to their bipedal fighting modes. Ironhide racked his enormous cannons and stood guard in front of the human warriors. Bumblebee unholstered his plasma gun and stepped in front of Sam and Michaela. Starscream locked his targeting computer onto the crossroads from above. His sensors screamed. He spotted the Allspark's immense, dazzling signature. He fully expected to see Optimus Prime carrying the cube, or a frail human urgently attempting to flee with it. Starscream changed mid-dive. It was a horrifying aerial acrobatics performance. The F-22 broke apart, with jets transforming into legs and wings working as gigantic stabilizers, revealing a wide, jagged, bird-like Decepticon covered in heavy missile pods. He fell toward the street, his bright red optics focusing on the target. "Die, Autobot scum!" Starscream screamed over his external speakers, prepared to launch a torrent of carpet-bombing missiles that would destroy the entire city block. However, as his optical sensors focused on the exact center of the Allspark signature, Starscream's internal system violently froze. He did not see a cube. He spotted an adolescent. An adolescent stands dead center in the street, staring up at him. And as Starscream watched, the human illusion faded away. The boy's skin exploded into beautiful white and gold transformium armor. Deep, dazzling blue circuitry pulsated across his chest. And suddenly Starscream felt it. The Genesis wave. It wasn't simply raw energy, but Primus Holy, biological frequency. The king of Cybertron ruled with crushing, absolute authority. It struck Starscream's spark like a literal hammer strike. Starscream, the devious, cowardly opportunist, encountered a level of dread that his programming was not built to manage. This was not a struggle over a relic. Megatron had unintentionally begun a conflict with their god. "No!" Starscream screamed, his voice glitching into a weak, static-filled screech. Starscream angrily aborted his attack run in a state of terror while in midair. He forced his missile pods to shut down, thrashing his stabilizers as he pulled up. He did not attack the Autobots. He did not attempt to capture the king. Starscream slammed into the roof of a nearby glass tower, his huge talons tearing up the structure as he scurried backward, urgently attempting to separate himself from the street below. "Abort! Abort!" Starscream roared over the Decepticon's encrypted wide-band frequency, his voice booming throughout the metropolis. "It is a trap. Megatron is a fool. The Creator is awake. The Jubi breathes. Flee." Ironhide blinked his optical shutters in disbelief while his cannons remained raised. Did Starscream just retreat from a human? He didn't retreat from a human, Optimus Prime stated coldly, rising to his full height. He retreated from his king. The tremendous, terrible sound of a large tank engine resonated from the north end of the street. The earth trembled as Brawl, a gigantic Decepticon tank, rolled into view, his primary turret moving towards the Autobots. A military helicopter with deep, pounding rotors approached from the south, signaling the onset of blackout. Starscream's desperate warning had gravely disorganized the Decepticon forces. Some were hesitant, their sparks fading at the mention of the Creator. But the Zealots, motivated by Megatron's total leadership, pushed forward, determined to dismantle the abnormality. The asphalt suddenly vibrated with a roar that was louder than a jet engine and louder than a tank. Megatron had arrived to the city. Starscream, you coward. Megatron's voice sounded from the sky, a terrible combination of wrath and wounded pride. Bring me the boy. Naruto did not flinch. The white gold armor plate now covered his entire body, and the blue circuitry shone so brightly that it cast long shadows down the street. He stared at the fearful human soldiers, Sam and Michaela trembling behind Bumblebee, and the loyal Autobots who were willing to die for him. The time for defensive maneuvers has passed. The time for running has passed. Naruto took a deep breath, allowing the unlimited power of the Allspark to flow through his mechanical veins. Optimus, Naruto demanded, his voice resonating with the full, unbridled force of the Ten Tails, shattering the glass windows of the surrounding buildings. Clear the street. I will handle Megatron. The sky over Mission City cracked. It wasn't a jet's sonic boom. It was the sound of millions of tons of concentrated gravity and wrath breaking through the sound barrier. An enormous, jagged figure obscured the stars, descending toward the business sector like a gunmetal gray meteor. Megatron didn't use his thrusters to halt his descent. He wanted to make an entrance. He intended to destroy the morale of both humans and Autobots in a single, catastrophic blow. He smashed into the center of the junction with the fury of a tactical warhead. The asphalt liquefied immediately. A gigantic crater developed, launching automobiles, concrete barricades, and street lamps into the air. A blinding cloud of pulverized dust and smoke engulfed the street. Captain Lennox and his men were thrown off their feet, with debris raining down on their heads. Ironhide and Ratchet braced themselves, their thick armor keeping the humans safe from the debris. Two blood-red optics flared up from the heart of the dust cloud. Cowards. Megatron's voice was a hellish howl of static and grinding gears, shattering the surviving glass in the surrounding skyscrapers. You kneel to a fleshling. You disgrace the Decepticon name, Starscream. The dust started to settle. The towering, 40-foot warlord emerged from the hole. His armor was scarred from the dam crash, and his knee joint was bleeding pale blue energon, yet his pure, menacing presence remained intact. He raised his right arm, the enormous fusion cannon groaning as it drew power straight from his dark, tainted spark. He gazed down at the Autobots before focusing his optics on the shimmering, white gold figure standing 30 yards away. Naruto remained still. The wind blasted down the street, but he was a firm anchor. His human attire was gone, and his body was covered in perfect transformium armor. The brilliant blue circuitry across his chest pulsed in a steady, tranquil pattern, precisely synchronized with the Allspark nestled between his ribs. He's not a fleshling, Megatron, Optimus Prime said, stepping forward and slipping his battle mask into place. The Prime pulled his enormous, brilliant orange energon swords. He is the Prime lineage. And your war ends today. Megatron yelled. My war ends when I hold the cube and your head is on a pike. From the north, the thunderous roar of artillery fire erupted. Brawl, the enormous Decepticon tank, rolled into the nearby street and fired its primary turret at the human soldiers. From the south, the thundering th-wump 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 of Blackout's chopper blades rang as the enormous Decepticon dropped, his heavy machine cannons blazing. Optimus! Naruto shouted, his voice piercing through the turmoil with a resonant, holy frequency that caused every machine within a 5-mile radius to stutter. Take your knights. Protect the humans from the tank and the chopper. Keep them out of the crossfire. My king, you cannot face him alone. Ironhide exclaimed, his cannons groaning. I am not asking, Ironhide, Naruto murmured softly, but the weight of his words felt like iron. Go. Optimus Prime paused for a brief while, his gaze fixed on the youngster who possessed their creator's soul. The Prime nodded. Autobots, defensive perimeter, engage the hostiles. With a coordinated battle cry, Optimus, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Bumblebee charged down the side streets to intercept Brawl and Blackout, diverting heavy fire away from Captain Lennox's soldiers and the scared adolescents. Megatron gave a nasty, grinding laugh. He looked down at Naruto, who was now standing alone in the middle of the destroyed junction. "You send your bodyguards away to die," Megatron hissed, emerging from the hole. "You are arrogant, little king. You hold the power of creation, but you have no idea how to wield it. You are a battery trapped in a fragile shell." Naruto cautiously lifted his hands. He didn't take a standard boxing stance. He closed his eyes and tapped into the limitless source of Genesis energy within his chest. He remembered the sensation of his chakra, the way it used to flow, and how he used to mold it. But this wasn't a chakra. This was the universe's fundamental building block. He compressed the energy. He forced the 10 tails raw, confined gravity outward, molding it into concentrated firepower rather than huge tails. Twin spheres of pitch black, immensely dense metal, the Cybertronian equivalent of truth-seeking orbs, emerged from his spine and floated over his shoulders. With a thought, the spheres expanded, spilling into his open hands and solidifying instantaneously. Naruto opened his blue eyes. In his hands were two sleek, perfectly balanced, 4-foot-long blades of pitch black transformium, their edges sparking with a brilliant, superheated blue plasma. "I'm not a battery," Naruto replied quietly. Megatron shouted, his patience depleted. He aimed his enormous fusion gun and blasted. A bolt of purple plasma, hot enough to destroy a city block, screamed across the street, right toward Naruto. Naruto didn't flee. Moving at an unfathomable speed, he swung his right energy sword in a faultless upward arc. Shing! The pitch-black blade came into contact with the plasma bolt. Instead of exploding, Naruto's sword's superheated blue edge cut the plasma beam exactly in half. The two parts of the divided energy blast flew past Naruto's shoulders, exploding against the buildings behind him and showering the street with harmless sparkles. Megatron's optical shutters dilated in complete shock. What? Before the Decepticon warlord could fire his second volley, the ground beneath Naruto's boots broke. Naruto rushed forward, breaching the sound barrier in a dead sprint. The sonic explosion broke the remaining windows along the street. Megatron's optical sensors saw the king as little more than a blurring streak of white, gold, and blue light. Naruto covered the 30-yard distance in a fraction of a second. He sprang into the air, flying 20 feet to face the behemoth. Megatron panicked and swung his gigantic, clawed left hand to knock the anomaly out of the air. Naruto twirled, utilizing the momentum of his launch. He swung his left blade in a powerful, sweeping stroke. The Genesis blade's superheated edge came into contact with Megatron's heavily armored forearm. The Decepticon steel, forged in the fires of Kaon and engineered to endure atmospheric re-entry, provided little resistance. The blade cut through the strong armor plating, hydraulic servos, and primary energon lines. Megatron screamed, a terrifying, high-pitched wail of metal and static. His enormous left hand, severed cleanly at the wrist, landed on the asphalt with a resounding bang. Pale blue energon erupted out the stump like a geyser. "You dare!" Megatron exclaimed in agony, his right arm jerking furiously. The fusion cannon was retracted and replaced by a huge spiky chain flail. He swung the flail with horrifying speed, intending to smash Naruto before he could fall. Naruto dropped to the ground in a squat. He did not attempt to block the multi-ton spiked ball. Instead, he dropped his swords, allowing the black metal to disintegrate back into glowing orbs. He raised his bare, white golden hands. He seized the spiked flail mid-swing. The kinetic energy of the impact was catastrophic. The shockwave blew the nearby abandoned cars end over end down the street. But Naruto's feet simply dug deep pits in the pavement, his ludicrous, localized density absorbing the impact. He clutched the huge chain solidly in his grip. He glanced up at Megatron, his bright blue eyes free of fear. "My turn," Naruto muttered. With a shout of exertion, the king of Cybertron pulled. The hibernating Jubi's physical might flowed into his limbs. He jerked the hefty chain with such power that Megatron, a machine weighing more than 40 tons, was forcefully wrenched from his feet. The towering warlord was dragged forward and flew through the air completely out of control. Naruto stepped into Megatron's path as he plummeted. He turned his hips, thrusting his white gold hand upward in a crushing, well-timed uppercut. His fist struck the center of Megatron's breastplate, exactly above the Decepticon's evil spark. CRRR-AK. The sound of armor breaking rang throughout Mission City. Megatron's gigantic frame was flung backward, sliding end over end along the boulevard, due to the force of the crash. The warlord slammed through the concrete pillars of a municipal bank building, causing the entire ornate facade to collapse on top of him in a large cloud of dust. Naruto stood in the middle of the wrecked street, his chest heaving slightly. The blue circuitry in his armor glowed fiercely. He slowly dropped his fists. He had just decimated the universe's most feared gladiator in less than 30 seconds. The sounds of Optimus Prime and Ironhide fighting brawl could be heard down the street, but everything else was silence. A feeble, static-laced cough could be heard from the mound of wreckage inside the damaged bank. Megatron slowly pushed a big concrete pillar from his chest. His armor was broken. His left hand was gone. The middle of his chest had collapsed in, revealing the fiercely sparking and corroded core of his spark chamber. He attempted to stand, but his injured servos whined and locked, causing the big behemoth to collapse onto his remaining knee. He looked up and saw the little, shining king approaching slowly toward him through the dust. Megatron was beaten. Physical superiority was absolute. Megatron, however, was more than simply a gladiator. He was also a smart, devious tactician. He knew he couldn't win a battle of raw might against the Creator. So he focused on the one thing the Creator truly cared about. Megatron's optical shutters blinked. He bypassed his broken vocal processor and delivered a limited, encrypted burst transmission to the skyscraper's roof above them. Starscream. Fire. Naruto's walk came to an end. His newly awakened sensors detected the encrypted signal, but he was unsure how to interpret it. He peered up, his eyes sweeping the rooftops. Starscream had never departed, hidden high above behind a business tower's neon sign. He had watched the entire duel in complete horror. However, his master's direct and overriding demand forced his cowardly hand. Starscream did not direct his missile pods at Naruto. He was confident the king would survive. He targeted his missiles down a side street. Right in the alleyway where Captain Lennox, Sam Witwicky, and Michaela Baines were currently hiding from the crossfire. Die with your pets, false god! Starscream screamed, sending 6 massive incendiary missiles right at the vulnerable humanity. Naruto's brilliant blue eyes expanded in pure fear. Time appeared to come to a complete, excruciating halt. Starscream's missile pods flared with blinding, superheated ignition as they hovered high above the crossroads, clinging to the neon-lit facade of a business tower. 6 massive incendiary missiles, meant to breach hardened military bunkers and destroy everything inside, screamed down from the sky. They were not aimed at the White Gold King, who stood in the middle of the devastated street. They were pointed squarely toward the small, debris-filled alleyway 50 yards to the left. Captain Lennox was currently forcing Michaela Baines behind a concrete retaining wall. Sam Witwicky was frozen in place, his eyes wide as he peered up at the 6 contrails of white smoke descending on them like scorching fingers. Agent Simmons went to his knees, clutching his encrypted radio, realizing with unsettling clarity that Sector 7's arrogance had finally caught up with them. There wasn't time to run. There was no time for Optimus Prime, who was currently engaged in a hard battle with Brawl 3 blocks away, to intercept the attack. In the center of the cratered roadway, Naruto's optical processors determined the missile's trajectory in a microsecond. If he ran, his physical speed would allow him to capture 2, possibly 3 of the warheads. The remaining 3 would head into the alley. The thermal bloom from the incendiary payloads would instantly vaporize Sam, Michaela, Lennox, Epps, and any other human soldier looking for shelter. Megatron, dripping pale blue energon from his severed wrist and smashed chest plate, laughed wetly and static-laced from the bank rubble. "Watch them burn, Creator," Megatron exclaimed, his red optics blazing with rage. "You cannot save them all." Naruto did not look at Megatron. He did not look at the missiles. He saw his best friend, Sam, looking afraid from behind the concrete barricade. "I am a king," The idea resonated over the vast, endless ocean of the Allspark throbbing inside his chest. And a king is defined by what he defends. Naruto slammed his white gold boots into the asphalt, anchoring himself to the city's bedrock. He spread his arms wide and thrust his chest forward. He did not repress the Genesis energy. He stopped trying to compress the Jubi's raw, terrible force into a humanoid shape. He let the floodgates to open. The loudness of the transition not only rattled windows, but also made the adjacent skyscrapers to groan and tremble on their base. Millions of tons of shifting, grinding, massively armored machinery were summoned from the void, creating a thunderous and spectacular symphony. A blazing pillar of pure, blue Allspark energy exploded from Naruto's spine, sending hundreds of feet into the night sky and temporarily blinding everyone in the financial area. From the center of that dazzling light, the Crown Prince's actual anatomy appeared. Not 3. Not 5. 10. 10 massive, prehensile limbs of jagged, interlocking white gold and silver transformium protruded outward. Each tail was the size of a giant suspension bridge, with an extremely thick base that tapered down to heavy, bladed points. The enormous localized gravity required to manifest so much mass instantaneously shattered the pavement for a whole city block, causing the asphalt to sink 2 feet directly down. "What in God's name?" Epps exclaimed, dropping his rifle in the alleyway as the sky above them was abruptly obscured by moving metal. Naruto did not use the tails to strike Starscream. He sped all 10 of the massive, mechanical behemoths across the intersection, severely displacing the air and causing a localized cyclone of dust and wind. The 10 tails converged right above the alleyway where the people were hiding. The huge tails weaved together, creating a loud clang that resonated for miles. The interlocking armor plates slid precisely into place and locked firmly. In less than a second, Naruto had built a massive, impenetrable dome of pure, gleaming Cybertronian metal, fully enclosing Sam, Michaela, and the warriors. A heartbeat later, 6 incendiary rockets struck the dome's exterior. The explosion was catastrophic. A gigantic bloom of orange and black fire consumed the entire roadway. The shockwave smashed every pane of glass within a mile radius. Cars were flipped end over end. The heat was so intense that it immediately melted the traffic lights and burnt the brick facade of the adjacent buildings. Starscream shrieked in victory from his position, presuming that the sheer thermal payload had reduced the humans, and the false god who protected them, to subatomic ash. Megatron slumped heavily against a broken concrete pillar, a vicious, smug sneer on his jagged faceplate. He had lost his hand and his dignity, but he had demonstrated that the creator was weak. The smoke started to clear. The fires on the roadway gradually burned down, leaving just charred dirt and melted asphalt. Megatron's sneer disappeared. His crimson eyes widened in absolute, hard-coded disbelief. The king stood in the heart of the burning inferno, unaffected by the flames. Naruto's white and gold armor was shining. His brilliant blue optics were fixed on Megatron with an air of total, scary calm. The 10 huge tails extended from his back and stretched across the wrecked roadway. The dome had received the full brunt of the 6 powerful missiles. The silver and gold metal were fully unharmed. There was no damage, scorch mark, or fracture in the transformium. The glowing blue circuitry running along the massive armor plates pulsed continuously, emitting a cool, relaxing hum that defied the surrounding devastation. Naruto flexed his shoulders. With a succession of heavy, hydraulic clicks, the 10 huge tails unwound. They slowly backed away from the alleyway, lifting into the air and fanning out behind Naruto like a scary, metallic halo of pure might. Inside the alley, the human warriors gradually rose up. They were covered in dust, wheezing, and completely unhurt. They gazed up to see 10 huge metal leviathans swinging gently in the night sky, throwing massive shadows across the city. Sam Witwicky dropped to his knees, his gaze fixed on the glowing, 6-foot youth who was anchoring the millions of tons of metal. "He's a god," Sam muttered, his voice shaking with wonder and dread. "He's literally a god." Michaela did not say anything. She merely looked, tears flowing down her cheeks, awed by the sheer, magnificent magnitude of the life form that had just rescued them. Captain Lennox gradually lowered his hands. He looked at Agent Simmons, who was currently curled up in a fetal position and rocking back and forth. Lennox grabbed his radio. Command. Be advised. The anomaly is friendly. Repeat, the anomaly is friendly. And it is the biggest damn thing I have ever seen. Across the street, Megatron's spark processor failed. The warlord had seen the impossible. He had hurled his most lethal ordnance at a humanoid vessel, which had merely willed an impenetrable castle into existence. The vast amount of mass, the faultless manipulation of Genesis energy. It was just what the ancient prophets had warned him of. Megatron collapsed backward upon the ruins, his hefty legs giving out. Kaun's pride was broken. Starscream, high above, did not wait for orders. When the unscrupulous air commander saw the 10 gigantic, thrashing metal tails shining with the Allspark's heavenly light, his survival instincts took precedence over his loyalty. Every Decepticon for himself, Starscream yelled into the wideband radio. The F-22 Raptor turned swiftly away from the financial sector. Starscream activated his afterburners, accelerating straight into the stratosphere, abandoning Megatron, the cube, and leaving Earth entirely. Naruto walked carefully down the street, toward the shattered Megatron. The 10 gigantic tails slithered across the shattered asphalt behind him, their heavy, bladed ends crushing the concrete to a fine dust. Their movement made a similar sound to a dozen freight trains moving at the same time. Naruto paused 5 feet away from the fallen Decepticon leader. He gazed down at the warlord's leaking and damaged chest plate. "You hate organic life, Megatron," Naruto shouted, his voice resonating with the resonant, booming frequency of the 10 tails, causing the air to quiver. "You view humans as fragile insects to be crushed under your heel. But it is that very fragility that gives them strength. It gives them something to fight for." Naruto raised his right hand. The 10 huge tails behind him suddenly arched skyward, their bladed ends aimed right at Megatron's spark chamber, like 10 colossal execution spears. "I am the king of Cybertron," Naruto announced, the blue light of the Allspark lighting up the entire block. "And Earth is under my protection." The Allspark's brilliant, ethereal blue illumination lit up Mission City's financial sector. The 10 huge transformium tails swayed gently in the smoke-filled air above the destroyed intersection, throwing massive, shifting shadows on the damaged skyscrapers. The tremendous, localized gravity necessary to anchor them caused the city's bedrock to groan. Naruto stood in the heart of it all, dressed in gleaming white gold armor and gazing down at the fallen warlord. Megatron was a terrifying sight. The once proud gladiator from Kaon was smashed beyond recognition. His left arm erupted in pale blue energon. His chest plate had collapsed in, revealing the wildly flashing, tainted core of his spark chamber. He was crouching in the bank's ruins, his hefty frame trembling as his internal systems battled for survival against total failure. Captain Lennox, Epps, Sam, and Michaela slowly emerged from the protection of the alleyway. They did not lift their weapons. They simply stared in utter, paralyzing amazement at the youthful deity who anchored the iron leviathans. "Yield, Megatron," Naruto ordered. His voice was not a shout, but the resonant, bass-heavy tone echoed over the city block, rattling the asphalt. "Your army is broken. Starscream has abandoned you. The Allspark is no longer a relic you can steal, it is my heart. This war is over." Megatron's optical shutters twitched. He stared up at the glowing, humanoid king. Megatron had convinced himself over millions of years that he was the true king of Cybertron. He had slain his siblings, wrecked his home planet, and chased a myth across the heavens, all to demonstrate that peace through dictatorship was the only way. To succumb now, to bow to a vessel that had spent the previous 17 years posing as a delicate, organic fleshling, was a fate worse than offline stasis. Megatron's red eyes blazed with malicious, venomous rage that defied reason. "I yield." To no one, Megatron growled, his speech processor buzzing with static. Especially not to a false god who bleeds for insects. Megatron did not attempt to stand. He knew his servos were entirely destroyed. However, his right arm, which remained linked to his torso, was functioning. Megatron swung his right arm up with an unexpected, horrifying burst of frantic speed. The powerful fusion cannon was locked in position, the barrel glowing with dazzling, superheated purple plasma as it extracted the last ounce of energy from his dying spark. However, Megatron did not aim the weapon at Naruto. He knew that the king's white gold armor and 10 tails could withstand the blast. Megatron pointed the cannon right at Naruto, aiming for the defenseless, terrified humans standing at the alleyway's entrance. "Die with your kingdom," Megatron shouted, smashing his finger against the firing mechanism. "No!" Sam screamed, wrapping his arms around Michaela. Naruto's optical processors detected the movement in a fraction of a nanosecond. The Jubi instincts blazed, not with protective fear, but with the cold, unequivocal hatred of a sovereign whose subjects were endangered. Naruto did not even move his arms. With a single, blinding thought, the massive tail closest to his right shoulder sprang forward like a mechanical bullwhip. The speed of the gigantic appendage broke the sound barrier, resulting in a sonic boom that smashed the street's few remaining windows. Before the purple plasma could depart Megatron's gun barrel, the warlord was struck by the massive, bladed tip of the transformium tail. The sound of alien metal penetrating alien metal was deafening. The Jubi's huge, blade-like tail tip drove cleanly through Megatron's shattered chest plate. It broke his ribs, cut through his powerful internal armor, and pierced his spark chamber completely. The bladed point protruded from the Decepticon's back, anchoring the 40-foot Titan to the concrete rubble underneath him. Megatron's huge body became fully stiff. The fusion gun shut down with a sad, dying whine, and the purple illumination faded into darkness. The Decepticon leader gasped, emitting a terrifying sound of grinding gears and escaping atmospheric pressure. He gazed down at the big metal and gold spike thrust into his chest, then up at the king. "You!" Megatron gasped out, his blood-red eyes quickly darkening. "You are a destroyer. Just like me." Naruto moved ahead, his white gold boots crunching on the debris. He paused inches away from Megatron's faceplate. Naruto's blue Genesis energy lit the dying warlord's face. "I am a protector," Naruto whispered quietly, his booming authority melting into a profound, ancient melancholy. "And a protector must sometimes carry the weight of taking a life. I forgive you, Megatron, but I cannot let you live." Naruto closed his eyes and directed a concentrated pulse of Allspark energy down the length of the impaling tail. The pure, brilliant light of creation entered Megatron's tainted spark. It was too much for the black energon to bear. With a final, violent shudder, Megatron's red glow flickered and faded permanently. The towering warlord fell completely limp, his huge head slumped downward. Megatron, the Decepticons' commander, was offline. Silence descended on Mission City. The only sounds were the distant wail of human sirens and the crackling of little fires among the ruins. Naruto stayed there for a long time, feeling the enormous, crushing weight of what he had just done. He'd never killed someone before, he was only a high school student from Nevada. But as he felt the Allspark humming continuously in his chest, he recognized that the high school student was only a shadow of who he truly was. Naruto slowly exhaled. He willed the Jubi to retreat. The 10 massive transformium tails effortlessly unanchored themselves from the bedrock. They melted into pure blue light and retreated back into his spine with a succession of heavy, hydraulic clicks. As the tails faded, the white gold armor that covered his body began to dissolve away, resembling his t-shirt, denim jacket, and human skin. He collapsed to his knees on the broken asphalt, panting for breath. The abrupt adjustment from millions of tons of mass to a 6-foot, 160-pound frame was extremely upsetting. "Naruto!" Sam exclaimed, disturbing the silence. Sam and Michaela dashed across the shattered street, utterly ignoring the fallen Decepticon. Sam sank to his knees beside his best friend and grabbed Naruto's shoulder. "Man, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Naruto looked up. His blue eyes were no longer sparkling, they were only blue. He appeared fatigued, afraid, and profoundly human. "I'm fine, Sam," Naruto said, giving a weak, wavering smile. "I'm okay." Heavy, rhythmic footsteps shook the ground. Optimus Prime, scorched and dented from his battle with Brawl, proceeded slowly into the crossroads. Ironhide, Ratchet, and Bumblebee followed, their weapons turned off. Optimus glanced at his ancient brother Megatron's lifeless body, then down at the adolescent kneeling in the mud. The 28-foot Prime carefully lowered himself to one knee, bowing his head in utter respect. Behind him, The remainder of the Autobots followed suit, kneeling in the debris of the human metropolis. "The warlord has fallen," Optimus muttered, his voice full of sorrow. "You have saved 2 worlds today, my king. Cybertron owes you its existence. Earth owes you its future." Captain Lennox and his men moved carefully forward, guns draped over their backs. Lennox saw the gigantic robots bowing to the adolescent before turning to face Agent Simmons, who was still staring blankly at the sky. "Simmons," Lennox remarked harshly, "you listen to me. This kid, this king, he doesn't exist. Sector 7 doesn't exist. You are going to wipe every hard drive, burn every file, and bury this so deep the president himself couldn't find it. Because if any government suit tries to put that boy in a lab again, I will personally shoot them. Are we clear?" Simmons blinked, taking in the cratered street, the dead alien, and the bowed titans. He nodded slowly. Yeah, we're clear." Naruto gently rose up, resting heavily on Sam's shoulder. He gazed at Optimus Prime. "What happens now, Optimus?" Naruto inquired gently. Optimus Prime gazed up, his blue optics gleaming in the darkness. "Now, we hide in plain sight. We protect your new home. And we wait for you to teach us how to rebuild ours. Stay tuned for more." Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.